I'm delighted to participate in this important gathering, which is as timely as it is significant. For we meet not only on the occasion of a global COVID-19 pandemic, but on the occasion of a global political pandemic, where we are witnessing a resurgent global authoritarianism, including a digital authoritarianism, a backsliding of democracies, a global assault on media freedom, and the dystopian use and abuse of cyber technology to threaten our democratic values and fundamental freedoms. In a word, what is happening now is that while technology races, the law lags, and the technologists are beating the lawyers. And so the dystopian features of our cyber technology revolution now include, first, the proliferation of state-sponsored cyber warfare with bugs like Stuxnet and more sophisticated ones that can disrupt electoral grids, shut down airports, and derail even election infrastructures. And where at this point, the figures on the keyboards or the bots on the screen are more important than boots on the ground. And while we have developed international legal regimes for the laws of war, the Geneva Conventions, the prohibitions of chemical weapons, we have yet to develop a legal regime in a matter of cyber warfare. Here too, the scientists are beating the lawyers, and with adverse consequences. Second is the weaponization of cyber technology, where just last week, the US Department of Justice unsealed charges accusing Russian military intelligence of aggressive cyber attacks, including the targeting of the 2017 French elections, power grids in Ukraine that caused global damage, targeting major corporations like Merck, Mondelez, Fedez, and Pfizer, causing billions of dollars in damage, targeting the 2018 Winter Olympics. In a word, the whole presaging prospective damage and disruptions in the November elections next week. Number three, the proliferation of ransomware attacks, the malicious software that locks up a victim's computer with the victim paying off the attacker. And where just last week, and I'm using just recent examples of just the last weeks, we witnessed the first known case of a ransom attack targeting an electoral infrastructure, and also attacks targeting universal health services in both the US and the UK, and attacking and targeting some 400 healthcare facilities, and where during the pandemic, such attacks are as terrifying as they are dangerous. Fourth is the weaponization of social media by global autocrats to repress and silence dissent at home while engaging in disinformation and destabilization abroad. And fifth is the exponential, indeed explosive increase in hate speech on the internet. And this in democracies where online hate leads to offline violence, and where the belated but welcome prohibition of Holocaust denial speech by the platforms should not sanitize or ignore the fact that as we meet, we are still witnessing state-sanctioned incitement to genocide by Khamenei's Iran on these platforms. Let there be no mistake about it. Prohibiting such state-sanctioned incitement to genocide is not just a policy option. It is an international legal obligation. And those who perpetrate such incitement to genocide must be held to account. And so, while we would all say that the technological advances have been beneficial, they have as well been posing, as I've been trying to share with you and using examples of the last week alone, dangers to our democratic space and to our individual rights and liberties. But a final example, and a compelling one, in the relationship between human rights, technology, and national security and threats to democratic space is in the field of law enforcement. Today, many law enforcement agencies use technologies developed and sold by private companies to fight crime and terrorism. These exceptional technologies have admittedly significantly improved law enforcement agencies' intelligence capabilities and provide for more effective law enforcement. However, the presence of offensive and intelligent technological tools in private hands can also pose real challenges to human rights worldwide. In a word, this reality raises enormous social dilemmas as well as difficult questions about the relationship between investors, private companies, law enforcement agencies, democratic space, and human rights. For example, what are the regulations on the sale and use of such advanced technologies? How can oppressive regimes be prevented from accessing such technologies? How can we assure that these technologies are not abused to suppress peaceful protest or free speech? Can such technology be sold to companies and individuals, or can only be sold to governments? What is the liability of a technological company for misuse of the technology it has sold? And are private technology companies committed and obliged to respect international human rights law? May I emphasize briefly 2 points that require the technology industry and governments to consider in their decision-making processes, not only in the cyber field, but also in the evolving field of artificial intelligence. In fact, in all areas of technology. The first is a deep gap, as I've mentioned, between law and advanced technology. This regulatory gap increases the risks and gray areas in technology companies' management, since freedom lies within clear boundaries. But when the edges are blurred, when the law is irrelevant, and the companies' advanced technologies, companies and investors need to act quickly, they may inadvertently find themselves in dangerous minefields. In a word, in the event of a legal, public, or media crisis, technology companies and investors may have trouble relying on the argument, quote unquote, I acted according to the law. For there's a broad appreciation today that the law is either irrelevant or itself unclear and does not address the risks arising from the company's technological activities. Moreover, in some cases, and particularly in connection with authoritarian regimes, companies may be taking a risk that one day they may find themselves that they are charged with aiding and abetting war crimes and crimes against humanity. Second, we are at the end of the age of innocence in relation to technology companies, journalistic investigations, and the like. In a word, such journalist investigations and films such as Netflix's Social Dilemma have exposed the dark side of technology in public and decision makers. Accordingly, companies must act in accordance with principles of corporate responsibility, establish human rights compliance programs, and carry out, where necessary, self-regulation. Simply put, without proactive action in the area of business and human rights, of ethics and human rights, tech companies will themselves lose public trust, inviting even more coercive and strict regulations by governments. In a word, without proactive action, we may be sawing off the branch that we are sitting on. Accordingly, there is a growing need for technology companies and investors to act proactively, to foster an ethical business culture that respects human rights, that have a dimension of accountability to investors, customers, employees, and above all, the public. I therefore had the pleasure recently of joining an important and necessary initiative of CybeRighTech, CRT, to establish a universal quality seal for technology and ethics and human rights. We believe that such a quality seal will soon be necessary for technology companies vis-a-vis governments, public organizations, investors, and the like. This CyberRight initiative, CRT initiative, has been joined by highly respected senior legal, audit, and regulatory experts, such as the Honorable former Supreme Court Justice of the Israeli Supreme Court, Salim Jubran. And CRT has developed a unique human rights due diligence model based on the principles defined by the UN, the OECD, the EU, and having been adjusted to specifically suit the cyber and technology business sectors. As well, it has developed a one-of-a-kind certification model for technology firms regarding international guidelines to ensure that technology companies and investors are in compliance with universally recognized standards such as OECD principles on AI, OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises, and the like. Let there be no mistake about it. And I say this also as a former Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Responsibility lies not only with the corporate structure, but also with governments to establish policies that will encourage and reward companies that develop evolving corporate responsibility and adopt ethics and human rights compliance programs, as well as holding them to account. For example, governments should stipulate in government contracts where they such contracts that they will have with private cyber companies, that they will only contract with such private cyber companies if they have a reliable certificate that they have adopted, for example, the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. The whole in order to prevent the doing of business with companies that aid and abet human rights violators. In conclusion, the Cybertech resolution, while having important advances in the economy, in medicine, in science and communications and the like, all of that which you know, also poses, as I've suggested above, real challenges for humanity, for cyber warfare, for ransomware, for the use of artificial intelligence, for the weaponization of social media and the like. All these challenges must bring about a situation where we control the algorithms and the algorithms do not control us. It is important that we understand both the magnitude of the challenge so as to develop an integrated policy of smart regulation that will allow technological developments, the important and compelling technological advancements to continue, but also to control the dangerous fallout that in fact is threatening our common humanity. And may I close with a brief message to all our corporate leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors. Don't wait for a lawsuit or regulatory investigation. Take a proactive initiative now. Let us become proactive leaders in the struggle for the promotion and protection of both technological advancement and the culture of human rights. Thank you.